of this best-of-2 series.
Well, we're going to have an Olaf immediately taken away. That's, of course, the target at Cabochard. It has been one of his favorites. And then the ever-so-powerful Vladimir is an answer. So far, not affected by the previous game, just going for the power picks.
Well, in the game before, we did see Azir, Karma, and Gragas being taken away as the bans for Vitality, and then Vlad, Ashe, and Olaf coming away from Schalke. So Vitality now being on the red side of the rift to force to ban away the Vladimir. Olaf is still sticking the same for Schalke. They might look to ban away the Ashe once more, but I feel like the Nidalee ban would make more sense.
Yeah, well, with Irelia removed, the Cabochard's going to have to find something a little bit different to carry on, if that's indeed the plan for him. Ashe is once again banned by Schalke, so that rounds out theirs. And Azir's taken away once again, so a lot of mid targets at Fox, and with good reason. We didn't talk him up for nothing.
Certainly seems to be the case, and I mean, I'm glad we chose our top lane matchup as our featured matchup, because in all honesty, it's been a really impressive one so far. While they haven't been toe-to-toe, the impact that each top laner has had this game really brings us back to, I mean, the old Cabo versus Steve matchup, where Cabo was on a carry, Steve was on a tank, and well, honestly, Cabo just made Steve look like he could do absolutely nothing in that game.
I mean, it's what we saw last split and what we expected last split. This time it was very different. The Nidalee is banned away as the last. It's by Vitality to prevent that first pickup.
Yeah.
Do we expect the Elise to come in here and force Shook onto something a little more out of the comfort zone or out of the meta?
I honestly think that you could be right with the Elise priority, simply because now Gilius would have the advantage with the early game pressure.
He doesn't do it.
He does not do it. So to me, this is like Shook has to instantly go for it now. Why would you not? It fits into your playstyle perfectly. Elise and Rek'Sai are two of the strongest junglers in the meta right now, especially with Nidalee off the table. It just, to me, it feels like something that Vitality would naturally slide back into, and the fact that Schalke have let that Elise through, to me, suggests that they do have an answer for it. And if we look back at some of Gilius's prior picks, he does put a lot of emphasis on this Gragas and Elise, so I'm sure he'd be fine playing the Gragas into it, more of that utility. And let's not forget, he did get that epic Baron steal against Giants on that Gragas, so he definitely knows how to play it.
Yeah, that's true. I'm a little bit more curious about the Karma first pickup. It is very powerful, and it has been valued quite a lot by a number of teams, but Schalke aren't the biggest Karma first pick team, and there we go. Shook picks up the Spider Queen, and we've got a Lucian in tow with Police there.
Yes, we do. So Vitality going for that early game powerhouse. Someone in the duo with the Lucian and the Elise, because Lucian, he now has options in his build path. We've seen today the Essence Reaver into Rapid Fire Cannon build coming out from Cobby, which means that you are working more towards the late game or the mid to late game. You have more scaling, whereas you could still go for the Ghost Blade into Black Cleaver, which did take a little bit of a hit on patch 6.12, which is the patch that we are playing on. But there was only 5 AD on the Ghost Blade, so still an effective build path that can help Lucian still have a big impact in the mid game.
On the other side, interesting choices for Schalke. They pick up the Gnar for Steve, something he has been excelling on, and we talked about a little bit, touched on last game. But the Graves comes in for Gilius. The Graves that was very, very powerful and contested really last split, and has kind of started to see more play, but not a whole lot, especially with the Rek'Sai still available. I'm a little surprised by that.
So this is actually really interesting, because I was having a conversation with a good buddy of mine from the UK, and he was telling me how Graves jungle seems to be rising in popularity a little bit more, because you now have a lot more burst potential if you actually decide to go Thunderlords and Xerxes Greaves. Because of the changes to Xerxes Greaves, we have a little bit more attack speed.
Whoa!
It actually
hold
has
on.
a lot of value. We'll get to that in a second.
We got a Kennen. I'm
We'll
excited.
talk about it in a second. We'll get there. I am also a Kennen expert, which is great.
Okay, excellent.
But the Graves, a lot of damage in the jungle. Typically, you want to pair it up with a tank, and actually over in Korea, we have been seeing it, because Koreans still value that high damage jungler with a solid tanky frontline, which is why I'm not a massive fan of the Gnar, especially this early on for Steve, when Cabochard, he basically wants to guarantee himself the counter pick, and the fact that he may be on that Kennen could be a bit of a problem for Steve moving forward. But let's just talk about Kennen, shall we? Because Kennen had changes in the Mage update that made him so good that I thought he was going to suddenly burst back into the meta, because now his ultimate hits everybody. And The energy costs have been slightly reduced. His ability in team fights is just so impactful, and typically you want to put him in the top lane because a longer lane makes it easy for him to land those skill shots, and he has his E to get out of any sticky situations, but he still works as a very valid mid too.
Well, we'll have to see if that's the choice, but we know Cabochard, it's the kind of champion he could go back to those roots that he does indeed like to dip back into every now and again. For Schalke, on their side, they pick up the Sivir AD carry for MrRalleZ, and the Swain once again comes into play. And it's all down to the last pick for Vitality.
So, once again, we're seeing the Swain come out from Fox. And while you pair it up with the Sivir, it makes a little bit more sense because now you have a slightly more reliable engage tool. You somewhat lack in terms of the hard crowd control again because of this Gnar pick, which personally I'm still not a massive fan of. I felt like you could have picked something a little bit safer here. The Trundle perhaps would have acted as a solid split push threat, but I guess what they're going for with the Gnar is, with the ultimate, you do have the potential for the flank engage, and I guess when you pair it up with the Sivir and the Karma as well, you can just run at your opponents, and you're definitely not lacking damage when you have a Graves, a Swain, and a Sivir in the mid, in this three-man trio pair. So, do quite like this damage threat coming out from Schalke, but I do worry about their ability to actually lock down their opponents. Yeah,
on Vitality's side, very bold to take the Varus into a composition that can, really ruin your day if you get anywhere near them. You see Flash Ghost Summoners, of course, but, Vitality's game plan here, they've got a lot of lockdown tools themselves.
Oh my word. I mean, crowd control seems to be the name of the game for Vitality because if you think about the way in which they want to play their fights, you have a flank TP coming from the Kennen. You might not even need a flank TP. You just flash in, you get your ultimate down. You can land that ultimate onto all 5 members. He then stuns multiple targets up. The Chain of Corruption comes out, and because they're all stunned, it buys enough time for the chain to spread out and then root all the other members on that team. And then you can just have Police cleaning up the fights in the backline while kaSing just provides that utility, provides the disengage as well. So I actually like this heavy, again, this heavy carry style of play that Vitality are running. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see how they make it work. Simply because it's great to see Kennen back in the meta once more.
Oh, yes, indeed. It's definitely going to be an interesting matchup, to say the least. Will the lockdown comp prevail against the group and win? That's a good old Sivir comp for you. Hashtag S04 if you think Schalke is going to be able to return this one to a 1-1, or if Vitality can knock out only their second 2-0 in the summer split so far. Hashtag VIT win. We're about to find out because we're loading up onto the Rift. Game 2, Schalke and Vitality.
And if Vitality can secure themselves a second win here, that would be fantastic for them on the standings. It would help them gain a little bit more ground towards the playoffs. And given that we've seen such mixed performances from all the teams in Europe, and seeing as, to be honest, we're now at the halfway mark, every win counts right now.
Oh yeah, most teams can take a look back and evaluate where they stand and who they've faced off, but Vitality, it is very early to tell with Shook back in the lineup if this is indeed a changed team or they just got themselves a really, really good game. But they definitely seem to be playing with a lot more confidence here. They start things off looking like standard lanes, but wait, because MrRalleZ and sprattel are swapping up, and so are kaSing and Police.
So you can see here that Schalke wanted to try and get the non-standard lanes because, to be honest, Kennen sucks in lane swaps, to be frank. I mean, he just he just sucks. Largely because his Q early on does very little damage. It's actually very hard to wave clear. His main wave clearing tools are his E into his W, and in lane you want to be maxing W because it makes it a lot easier to harass. So the reality is getting standard lanes for Vitality makes a lot more sense. And while they might struggle against the Karma, who puts a lot of poke down and can put a lot of pressure down to the braum, very similar to what we saw in Game 1. When it's paired up with a Sivir, that means that Lucian has a little bit more trading potential. What they lack, though, is that wave clear. So we could see, once again, Vitality's bottom lane getting shoved underneath that turret.
Well, we will have ourselves some good old Australia lanes. The first dragon going to be spawning its Infernal. Let's take a look at those summoners, though, because you nailed it in one. The Graves Thunderlords, a little bit of extra burst available in Gilius' arsenal. So as things settle in, once again, since it's effectively standard lanes, we get to see what these junglers can bring to the table. Last game, it was certainly a hell of a party, and they were taking the lion's share of kills.
So the thing for me here is the fact that we're now seeing Cabochard on hyper carries once more. And you might not consider Kennen a hyper carry, but oh my word, Proto Belt into Azonias, into Abyssal. So many good things for Kennen in this patch right now in terms of build path, just so many good things.
Yeah, that's a real speedy Pikachu. Really looking forward to seeing those teleport flanks. Cabo, I mean, he's back in his element, and this is great for him right now.
Oh, and there's no Cloud Drake, so he's going to be slow getting into all these team fights. He's going to have to deal with
so unlucky.
With all this extra damage, Pyra. I mean, it's a little bit unfortunate for Cabo, but I mean, that's the problem with RNG Drake, so you just have to find a way to play around them.
I had no idea you love Cloud Drake so much, Vedius.
I am a big advocator of moving really fast.
Okay. Well, then you'll love Schalke's comp.
Oh,
Gilius, hello. Shotgun not effective against Spiders early game.
Seems that way. Gilius, though, getting that Thunderlord's proc, but fortunately, because Shook has all this extra health from going for that mastery, it is making Gilius' life a little bit more difficult. But have a look at this support from sprattel coming out.
They decided to bring the fight to the jungle rather than bring the junglers to the fight. Ah, unlucky reset. Yeah, it's really hard to clear your camps when people just keep wanting to fight you constantly.
Okay, so I'm now going to talk about this, why Kennen is so good in this meta right now.
Please continue.
I have to. Simply because so much cooldown reduction in the game. His core build of Abyssal, Zhonya's gives him plenty of cooldown reduction. He's very likely going to go towards the Proto Belt as well, which also gives him cooldown reduction. He's likely going to have cooldown reduction in his ability, in his runes and masteries too, which means that he's going to be quickly getting that 40% CDR, and a 40% CDR Kennen in these team fights is terrifying, because it means you can get those stuns off multiple times, it means you can stack huge amount of AP, you can also build slightly off tank, and I want to keep my eyes on what Cabochard actually decides to max second. But also, he can be such a massive lane bully because the range on Steve is actually quite short, and every time Cabo is going to pick himself up this lightning mark on his 5th hit, it means that he can just walk up, play hyper aggressively, and he's always going to be able to land that damage down. And this is why Kennen in the long lanes can be such a massive bully, and even if a jungler comes, he's fine. He's got his lightning rush to escape from any dangerous situation, and it's just enabling Cabo to be what we used to see from Cabo, this hyper carry top. And now Shook again on this Elise. Hopefully he can just facilitate this aggression and he can just continue to help Cabo succeed.
It's definitely not looking good for Steve on the bottom side right now. He's in a whole world of trouble. Up in the top, it's been the opposite story with RalleZ and sprattel pushing in and really giving Police and kaSing a hard time, but you know, that's the advantageous 2v2 that they wanted. So once again, we see teams with split strengths in split lanes.
Ooh, it looks
Shook
like
coming in.
Trying to get a gank down onto Fox.
Yeah, Beatrice is there though. That's cool.
Now, we talked about the top lane / bottom lane. Now I want to go to my favorite role in the mid. Simply because this is a matchup that we don't typically see. Varus into Swain. Now, what you'd think is ADs typically pretty good into mages because they don't actually do a great job of trading back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah, sprattel's going to be fine. He's just going to laugh that one off. But yeah, the problem is for Nukeduck is every time he walks up to farm, Fox can always throw down that harass. And now the fact that he's level 6, the amount of sustain that he gets back means that he will out DPS Nukeduck in the vast majority of instances. So I can understand why Nukeduck has picked the Varus compositionally, but for the matchup, this is definitely a rough one for Nukeduck. And he's done a pretty good job of farming underneath the turret. He's going to be able to pick up this wave, and that's largely due to the fact that that one gank from Shook prevented Fox from being able to shove that wave underneath the turret, and that meant that Nukeduck could set up a bit of a pseudo-freeze, and that's how he's now building up the CS advantage. Yeah. So Shook, again, helping his laners out where they need it.
And this is the X factor when you have teams just fairly evenly matched with strengths and weaknesses kind of complementing one another. Cabochard continuing to force Steve away from this, and the CS gap just keeps on widening. Nukeduck is doing a pretty good job at forcing Fox, you know, really into the zone here and out of his own comfort zone. But it does seem like we are settling in for a much slower game than we had last time, although we can hardly blame the teams for that.
You know, Sifa said that in Game 2 between Splice and UOL, and then we saw all the action kick off at 7 minutes in the game. So I'd be careful, Pyra. Teams love to catch you off guard.
Well, you know, the caster curse is a very real thing. It does happen from time to time. You know, and there's an Infernal Drake on the map too, so I suppose it would not do well to underestimate these teams' ability to go straight for the jugular. Shook is going to be going in for a little bit of warding himself. The blue buff not yet spawned, so he can't get it. But they are aware of his presence right now as he goes a roving, trying to find any stray camps.
He just wants to keep that pressure on with the deep vision. Just look at the number of wards that are in the top half of Schalke's jungle right now. And Gilius, he can't quite match the same sort of pressure. Not going to be able to get the ward to the disappointment. Nukeduck gets locked up.
Chains are on. Fox, though, it gets turned around right back on him, and the minions are assisting. Yeah, he's still Swain, but got to be careful.
That is one point that I did not mention about the fact that the E from Nukeduck actually does apply Grievous Wounds, which is a very valuable thing as a TP comes in the top lane.
They're going for sprattel and MrRalleZ. That's going to be the Karma. E popped. Inspired by it. They get themselves away, dodging away for most of the CC, but will it be enough? No! First blood over to Police, looking for sprattel, and it's Cabochard who nets himself some gold.
Clean execution coming out from Vitality. MrRalleZ had already burnt his flash, same for sprattel to try and avoid the engage from Shook, and that made it so easy for Cabo to guarantee that his ultimate would land. And in all honesty, that was just a bit of a misplay from Schalke. They should have been more mindful of Cabo rather than Shook, and they end up getting punished for it. And Cabo picking himself up his first kill of the game is going to be massive for this Kennen.
Yeah, on the other hand, Schalke have taken the moment's pause to start themselves up the Infernal Drake. They're going to be playing for that late game, 8% scaling, coming in oh so handy at later stages. With Steve and Gilius doing it, no response since they hopped right over the wall. So Vitality might have gotten themselves 2 quick kills, but they do pay for it.
Yes, they do. And to be honest, with the Infernal Drake gone, it is going to hurt them as the game progresses. But I mean, if you've got a gold lead, then what really is an Infernal Drake, eh? So, have a look at this collapse coming out from Vitality. Double flash gone from Schalke. Makes it so easy for Cabo to land the ultimate onto multiple targets. The red rain of lightning falls down upon his opponents, locks them in place, and enables Vitality to get themselves an easy double kill.
Yeah, things settling back in just a little bit. That is Vitality with a solid gold lead here, though they are behind the Drake. No towers taken just yet. They did send a pounding onto the top side one, and oh, would you look at that? We're going to have another Infernal Drake coming up pretty soon.
Oh my, juicy.
Well, I think we kind of need one after what happened last game.
Yeah, we've got too much air in our lives right now.
And water, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, you can only have too much air, do you know what I mean? Sometimes you just need a bit of...
I really don't, actually.
You know? You've never experienced that? Some days you haven't just walked down the street and go, God, just so much air in me right now. I could really use like a match or something to change my life up a little.
Dude, I ride the S-Bahn. I don't know what air is.
So many people are not going to get that reference.
Yeah, if you're in Berlin and you take public transit, it gets a little cramped in the summer. That's all I'm going to say. All right. Gilius up here on this top side is trying to zone the rest of Vitality away so they can get some free time on the tower, but it looks like we might settle in for a trade. Steve, however, does have Gnar approaching. Even with Shook coming in the 1v2, I'm not sure about this one.
I think they can honestly go for the dive. Cabo has his ultimate up, but they're just going to concentrate their efforts onto the turret. Steve, with his Gnar, could look to try and turn this one around, or at the very least just defend his turret. But Vitality, they want to exchange, and I think they're going to get the exchange.
Yeah, it was a quicker trade for Schalke, or so it seemed, but they were able to knock it out of the park real quick from the previous damage, and 3 Schalke members still on this top side taking away jungle camps and, you know, empowered by the fact that they know Shook's not at home.
Decided not to commit to it, though. They didn't have the minion wave. Culling also coming out from Police prevented any real investment into that tier 2 turret in the top lane. And that is just going to result in Schalke stealing away some of the jungle camps and returning to normality. So now we are going to be in a bit of a lane swap scenario in terms of how you actually prioritize your laners. Because notice that the lane is actually pushing towards Schalke right now, but MrRalleZ, he's going to push this one out, so it would be better to actually send the Kennen up there and send both Police and kaSing to the bottom half of the map to then push that wave underneath the turret to then get it bouncing back to you so that you can then have Cabo collect it later. So the fact that they're sending Police up to the top lane could hurt Cabo later on, but the fact that Steve, he's actually missed a bit of an opportunity because he's just shoving the wave back underneath the turret, and they're not going to deny Cabo anything.
No, and Cabo, it's going to be hard to deny him a lot of the action right now as well. He finishes his proto belt, so that is going to be a real speedy yordle as he goes running through the fights.
And he's going to go for the Abyssal next. You can see he's picked up that Fiendish Codex, decided that he's not going to prioritize the magic resistance, largely for his lane opponent, but also because Fox is the only major magic damage dealer. But it is too valuable of an item on the Kennen to just ignore it. So he's going to pick that one up next, followed by the Zhonya's to allow him to stay nice and healthy and tanky in these fights. And I mentioned earlier on, I want to keep a record of what he's deciding to max. He is going for the Shuriken max second. And the only reason I mention this is because some Kennens have, in the past, maxed E second, only because it actually gives you armor and magic resistance when you're in that electrical surge. So you can be surprisingly tanky in this Kennen, running into fights where people think they can nuke you down, but on top of an Abyssal Zhonya's and the extra MR and 8 armor you get, he becomes a pretty beefy frontline.
Yeah, but for the time being, they're not too worried about what they're going to be able to get done in fights because they just keep trading in towers. We already had the top trades and bot trades, but the inners actually go as well. So neither team bites on the other's bait, and as a result, that's a lot of gold flowing in. But you can see Vitality are actually committing to this with Cabochard, but Schalke around the side to dive onto Nukeduck. In they come! He lands the chains, but the blowback is there, and Nukeduck flashes the wall! He gets away! I don't believe it! In comes Cabochard to save the day! Or is he the one that's gonna pay the price? It looks like it. RalleZ will fall on top, though. A 1-for-1.
Oh my word. I thought that was going to be such a massive cleanup for Cabo, but a quick exhaust coming out from sprattel mitigates so much of the damage, and that results in Cabo being on the back foot, getting caught up by the never move, and things just went wrong. But RalleZ, for some reason, he ends up staying underneath the turret a little bit too long and gives away a return kill.
Yeah, Shook is going to be going in for sprattel, and they managed to get away as they clear the wards.
Oh man, the crowd is definitely getting pretty hyped for today's games.
Yeah, Nukeduck, I mean, he was a dead man here, but what do we say to the God of Death? Not today.
Not today, and good ultimate coming out from him, but then look at this from Cabo. Very quick exhaust, and RalleZ, he doesn't even realize he's, oh my word, that was so good, because he doesn't realize he's still tanking the turret. He wants to go back in to help Fox out, and then because he actually walks back in range, Cabo gets the stun off with his W at the last second and is able to get the return kill. So really impressive stuff coming out from Cabo to net 1 kill.
Yeah, that's what we call an oopsie, unfortunately. Steve, he's moving on up in Gnar, and he does get a big one against the wall. Shook, though, is going to have to burn his flash to get away. No follow-up there from the rest of Schalke. And Nukeduck just keeps on pushing them away from the tower. Yeah, we're definitely in for an action-packed game, that's for sure. It's just a little less death-filled so far.
Certainly seems that way, but now with the Infernal Drake having spawned, that could very likely change. Cabo, he has his ultimate, but he has no flash, and I think Vitality are just going to have to concede it.
Yeah, Schalke's right on it, and they do take it, but they give up Gilius. It's a 1 for Dragon.
And now Vitality have the position to take this tier 1 mid, and it's going to go down uncontested, so that's going to give Vitality the turret advantage, as well as extend their gold lead, but Schalke having those 2 Infernal Drakes is something that Vitality have to be very mindful of.
Yeah, as the game goes on, that's definitely going to help out more and more for Schalke, and Vitality, you know, just a little bit slow on the draw. They could have had a little bit more as they were able to take out Gilius and the rest of the team bailing away, but that might be the last Dragon fight we see for a while.
Oh, no, thank God, we've got the Cloud Drake. That means that Cabo, he's not going to struggle so much getting into these fights, because of all that movement speed that he's going to get off the back of it. It's going to be so beneficial. We have to be careful, though, that our observers can even keep track of how fast he's going to be moving.
I think he needs tier 2 boots before we start worrying about that.
No, but he doesn't, because now if he gets the Cloud Drake, he doesn't need boots at all, Pirate.
All right, I'll take your word for it.
Obviously, he doesn't give that many benefits, but still, Cabo deciding not to pick up those boots actually could hurt him, because it will be difficult for him to get into these fights without his flash up. I imagine Sork boots will be his priority, because the penetration is just that much more valuable, but the later the game goes, that penetration does start to fall off. So
that's, by the way, the second game in a row we've seen Vitality opting for the Rift Herald about 15-16 minutes and giving it to Cabo to make sure he can split push, to make sure he can get into those fights a little bit quicker as well.
But the damage is half for ranged champions, so on that Kennen, it's going to have slightly less value, but still not useless, which is important to know. It does make Cabo a little bit harder to kill. But have a look as well, Steve, he's actually decided to close the gap a little bit more. I was a little bit wrong in my prediction with Cabochard simply because Fiendish Codex, I always forget, also builds into Zhonya's. It's not an Elise large rod anymore. So, unfortunately, still too old school for the new up-to-date Zhonya's. And it's still going to be fantastic for him in these fights. And I think the armor actually makes a lot more sense in the comp that he's going up against.
Yeah. For now, Steve is doing his best to look tasty, but look at where the rest of Schalke are around the back of the map, and they have baited Cabochard in. Well, when there's a teleport, you gank it. They run right on in there. He does go golden for just a second, buying some time, but there's a quick ultimate out of Gilius, collateral damage, and that is exactly what it is. It's going to be towers traded, but Schalke are the quicker ones, and they have also taken the life of Cabochard to boot.
No vision on the map from Vitality, and honestly, it's one of those things where you could have said to Cabo, well, you should have expected it, but in the situation, he just wasn't aware that the collapse was coming down from Schalke, and he might have been able to get a return kill onto sprattel, or at least force the exhaust out, but if it wasn't for a good ultimate from Steve to knock Cabo into the wall, there was no way he was getting out of that situation. So, good collapse coming out from Schalke, but Vitality, they still respond with the turrets down in the bottom half of the map. You can just see, so unfortunate for Cabo. He wasn't expecting it at all. He used his proto belt to help clear the wave, and that's one less escape, that you have to get out of that situation.
Yeah, I mean, they were able to trade down on the bottom side, but clearly you don't want to lose a man, especially when you're the ones trying to maintain that gold lead. So Schalke get a bit more back from them in this game, as we're not quite 20 minutes in, has really been full of a lot of these skirmishes, a lot of these catches, a minute until the Baron spawns, and obviously the teams won't go there real quick like, but you know, if they start grouping up and trying to apply those pink wards that are filling the inventories of Vitality right now, to see where they decide to focus their attention.
Yep, certainly seems to be the case. I mean, pink wards at this point in the game, very, very important. Helps you really maintain control of these big objectives that you're going to look to contest, especially with the big teamfight comp that Vitality have drafted for themselves. And Vitality need to be very mindful of the fact that Schalke, they want to try and contest some of these big objectives. But they are going to steal away that blue buff. Now, moving forward, Schalke looks like they're setting up a bit of a 1-3-1. They do have the double teleport, and because Nukeduck decided to go for the Ghost, he's not going to be able to match that sort of side lane pressure, which means that Cabo has to deal with him. And Vitality...
Ooh, that's a value blue trinket.
Yeah, that is value right there. Very good awareness coming out from Fox. And this is the sort of awareness we were talking about earlier on.
You can still see in the builds alone how Schalke are fearing and respecting Cabochard right now. 3 Merc Treads across the board.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that just says we don't want to deal with you.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean,
there's a lot of CC in general.
Yeah, there is a lot of CC. So the Merc Tread's definitely making a lot of sense. You want to pick up that tenacity as soon as you can. But still, the fact that Schalke, right now, even in a gold deficit, have themselves 2 Infernal Drakes. Their mid laner is pretty healthy right now. The only one that's really at a deficit is MrRalleZ, who, even in that deficit, still working towards completing that second item, which is likely going to be finishing relatively soon. Yeah, he's almost got the gold to pick that item up, so Schalke, they're not too far behind. There's plenty of room for them to come back into this game. They just have to be very mindful on how they execute these fights, and that exhaust from sprattel really could be game-changing.
Yeah, waiting for the power spikes too. I mean, you've got 2 Infernal Drakes right now. That gives you 16% of your AD and AP bonus. You've got Fox, who we've seen really step up in the clutch when he becomes a late game monster. We've got, Graves should be fairly hard to kill the longer this game goes on as well. But I feel like the back of this is going to be on engages with Steve.
The Steve engages will be important, but you also have to bear in mind that MrRalleZ can force these fights as well. It's not that hard to... MrRalleZ on the hunt into the sprattel mantra E means that you have a very quick comp. Stack a Cloud Drake on top of that, and you basically become like an Olympic running team.
All right, I get it. We're fighting over Vedius. You've convinced me.
But still, in all seriousness, that it will add an ever so slight more value to this very fast running comp, and it makes it that much easier for Steve to actually get to the backline and land that big AoE Gnar ultimate to set up for his team to then try and take the fight.
Yeah, so Cloud Drake gets quickly dispatched by Schalke. They've been the Dragon Masters this game.
Yep.
And even though they're down about 3,000 gold here, Vitality have not really punished them any further. They've not gotten any deep vision outside of a couple of stray wards in that jungle. The one gank attempt they did make in the last few minutes was thwarted by a blue trinket. Schalke seem to have stopped them from really pushing their edge.
Things for Vitality, that's fine, because they are a composition that is more about 3-item spike rather than the 2. Because Lucian, going for more of the scaling build in the Essence Reaver rapid fire cannon, going to be looking to pick up, I believe, an Infinity Edge next, followed by Nukeduck. He wants to complete that Mortal Reminder to help deal with the Swain. And then Cabochard, he wants to finish what looks to be a Void Staff. So decided not to go for the Abyssal Scepter. I can understand why, but I feel like he loses a little bit from it. Instead, he still wants that penetration and has decided to pick up the early ability power in the form of that Void Staff for his 3rd item. Once these 3rd items are done, that's when Vitality is saying, okay, we feel a lot more confident to try and force these fights right now. And so as long as Schalke just keep farming along and allowing Vitality to do this, I think Vitality are okay with that.
Well, Schalke, they're the ones that went to hunting, but it's Gilius who gets caught. He does throw down collateral, dashing away. Quick draw to avoid the damage, but that is going to be all there is to that fight. Meanwhile, the push continues. Teams keep banking that gold, waiting for those 3rd items, waiting for those 4th items, just continuing to let the game progress as it will. 23 minutes on the clock is the current time, and Baron starts to get more and more real. Teams pinging it out.
I'm just keeping my eyes on these itemizations because I'm just waiting for the next big spike, and that reason for the teams to press that go button, because I do feel like the next fights will be explosive. I mean, how can a fight not be explosive when there's a Kennen in the game? You know, it's so good at team fighting, can have such a monumental impact. But fair play to Steve. What was a very rough laning phase, he has come back into nicely. 0-0-2 right now, decided to go for the Frozen Mallet build to help stick to his targets. And he's now got the level advantage, the farm advantage. And in these 2 fights, I do honestly feel that the top laners are going to decide the actual outcome.
Yeah, it's matching the split push pressure for the time being, and that means that Vitality aren't really going to be able to push down too much in multiple lanes. So for Schalke, it does seem like they're pretty happy just kind of pumping the brakes and allowing Vitality to try and come to them. And they can always turn it back on when they want, but they've got to survive. Sprattel, a big chunk of damage taken out of his health bar from the culling, and Gilius now getting collapsed on kaSing, flashes, fissures, but does not find a target.
He is going to force the flash out of Gilius, though, which could come to bite him in the backside later on. But Nukeduck is just putting so much unrelenting poke down that, in all honesty, Schalke have no answer for. That's forcing them back, and that could allow Vitality to potentially go for a very quick Baron play, but there's always the risk of the collapse coming out from Schalke.
Yeah, they're indecisive, not wanting to go in there, and with a blue trinket sweep in, they know on Schalke's side that that is not happening anytime soon. So Vitality go right back to the mid lane, and the 2 top laners continue to push each other in either side. Top lane all forgotten. This is the 4-1 versus 4-1, a poke battle with Nukeduck leading the charge.
This is it. I mean, when you have these 4-1 setups, there are no answers for Schalke to stop Nukeduck just getting all the poke down that he wants. He's got himself the blue buff. He has the Ghost Blade completed. And to be honest, I mean, what does Schalke do? They can't force a fight with that Steve. If he wants to go for a TP flank, you're then going to have to try and force something that is great for a Kennen, because the best case scenario for a Kennen is not one where he starts the fight, but one where he can join a fight halfway through that's already begun, because it means that he's not the priority. And as long as you're not focusing your attention into shutting the Kennen down, that's really when he can shine in these exchanges.
So after some more chip damage on that tower, Vitality retreat over towards the Baron pit, and they start to set up the vision they need to be able to take it out. Scuttle Crab cleared away. Police is real quick on the draw right now, and they start to set up the Death Rush. Will Schalke take the bait? Not after Sprattel checks into a very quick arrow.
Look at Cabo. Oh, he was just sitting on the base, waiting to use that home guard teleport play, realizing that the play wasn't going to happen, so he's going to pick up that farm in the bottom.
Nukeduck's just drawing his bow as I go for that pink ward. I dare you. He's constantly pumping those arrows out right now. The quiver's never running out, but Steve just comes right in the middle of it. He's about to get Mega Gnar here, but Nukeduck, he lands the chains, and Steve, he's gone Mega, he hops out of it. That's a key ultimate used.
Nukeduck underestimated his own damage, and he was putting a lot of work onto Steve, but then Nukeduck was a little bit indecisive as to whether or not he wanted to commit to the fight, and that enabled Steve to not only get into Mega Gnar, but also jump away just as the ultimate was coming out. So, bit of a wasted ultimate from Nukeduck, but it's not on that long of a cooldown. 45 seconds until it is available once more. And so then that will enable Vitality to just, it's not going to hurt them in the long run.
No, that's for sure. They're still rocking that gold lead. It's just shy of 3,000 at the moment, and Cabochard starts to shove the wave once again further back down in that bottom side, while Fox had been dispatched up to the top lane to do the same. Vitality still keeping vision control around this map. It has definitely been a game of wards killed. You're right to cheer for him.
Things feeling a lot more tense right now. Whichever team pulls the trigger, I mean, this is it. See, like, do you want to be the team that pulls the trigger, potentially walks into the Swain, into the Gnar ultimate?
Yeah,
or
teleports up across the board, too.
Do you want to just allow time for things to potentially go beyond your control? Because look at this, Steve, he's now got himself another level advantage. He's 16 to the 14 of Cabo.
Yeah, Vitality have committed to the Death Brush. And right now, it's not really doing them any favors because Schalke are way too wary of this. Steve is going to solo out the Ocean Drake here. That'll give a little bit of extra regen if they deal too much of Nukeduck's damage onto these key targets. So Schalke are perfectly happy waiting this one out, playing the siege game.
Definitely seems that way. As picking up that Ocean Drake going to be very valuable, especially against the poke of Nukeduck, because the regen it gives you more health based on the amount that you're missing. So the more poke you take, the more value that you're getting out of that Ocean Drake.
That's one way to look at it. I don't know if you should necessarily take the poke, but speaking of, the Baron is taking a whole helping of damage. It's down to 3,000 here. Chains are on. It's not going to connect, but Vitality, they've started to peel away as the teleport's coming in. This is a 5v5 we've been waiting for.
Oh my word!
Exhausted, but he doesn't care. He's done his job. Steve gets a knock against the wall, but Police will live to fight another day. Shook, however, may not be so lucky. Repels into the shotgun of Gilius. And it looks like it's only a matter of time before the end of the line. A 1-for-1 fight.
Wow. I thought that was going to be such a big turning point, but that again, the clutch exhaust coming out from sprattel prevents Cabo from being able to clean up the fight, and Nukeduck by himself prevents Schalke from being able to get that Baron. 1-for-1, no Baron taken, game resets.
That is how much they fear the Nukeduck. Starting the Baron with 4, one arrow comes in like, okay, we gotta go. We can't deal with this anymore. Nukeduck is going off right now.
He certainly is. I mean, this Varus is one scary pick. Yet to complete his third item, but he is going to go back to base with a large heaping chunk of gold. And Cabo now with that Void Staff as well, going to benefit him a lot, especially against that Locket of the Iron Solari that has been finished for sprattel. So there's the mortal reminder coming out from Nukeduck. Always something that you want to be picking up against these champions that gain a lot from regeneration. As the final Drake of the game will be that Ocean, but let's have a look at how this fight plays out. Unfortunately, Nukeduck a little bit preemptive on his ultimate. Could have bought a little bit more time. The re-engage coming out from Cabo, completely unexpected from Schalke. And I feel like it was a little bit of an early Zhonya's from Cabo. He wanted to try and get at least one tick onto both sprattel and MrRalleZ to then ensure the likelihood of landing a stun. But unfortunately, he wanted to just go into golden the moment that exhaust came down. And I mean, yeah. So now, he has his ultimate, exhaust is down. This is a good opportunity for Vitality to try and force a play. But Schalke, they're actually the ones that are trying to engage.
Yeah, Steve's on the back. That's a massive Gnar. In comes Fox, and oh my word! That is Vitality dropping down to 0. Schalke with a classic pincer. Take out 4 and look to Baron.
And I thought Vitality had the wombo combo, but Schalke, unbelievable execution. And off the back of that, they're going to get themselves the Baron, and they're going to take firm control of this game.
That busts the doors wide open here. Baron going to be taken. No contest as Police is the only one who lives to tell the tale of an epic fight. Schalke now in control.
Just ridiculous. I was not expecting that to be the game-changing play. We've been talking so much about, do you want to be the team that engages or gets engaged upon? And Schalke quickly decide, enough of this back and forth. Let's just force the fight. Cabo had his ultimate, they didn't have exhaust. They're not going to be able to get themselves an inhibitor, but they can be pretty happy with what they've gained.
Oh, you can say that again. So Vitality spawned just in time to start saving their base, but they've got to deal with 2 waves pushing against them in the top and the bottom. So many dragons coming into play here, but let's see how this positioning changed it all.
Instant ultimate from kaSing. Into the stun, Fox coming in from the flank. Gilius landing his ultimate and damage onto multiple targets, and then on top of that, the multi-target damage coming out from RalleZ. Just everything lined up so beautifully. Like, I'm looking up in the ceiling right now with my eyes closed, you know, just very much the, perfect, so good. I mean, that's one of those, you know, wombo combo moments that will live on for eternity. So good coming out from Schalke.
Yeah, every time you hear that Sivir ult, you start to hope that something like that might happen again. On the hunt, Pop, looking for kaSing and Police, who are hot-footing it back into their own base. They have lost a lot of ground in a short amount of time. Next Dragon, as you mentioned, the final non-Elder of the game is going to be the Ocean, but you know, with the way Schalke are controlling right now, they may not even need to opt for it here. Waiting around the corner.
A little bit of an anticlimactic ultimate coming out from RalleZ. Not going to force any objective, but again, also pretty low cooldown, so it will be ready for the next fight. Big question now, as we always have with a lot of these middle-of-the-pack teams, is how can they now break into the base of their opponents? They have the 1-4 setup, they have the Baron-empowered minions, but there is a lot of poke and a lot of wave clear coming out from Nukeduck that Schalke have to somehow find a way around.
Schalke trying to even up this series, 1-1. Vitality just hoping desperately to pick themselves up a full 2-0, but Cabochard is keen to turn it around. He goes golden after his full channel, but it's just not enough damage anymore. Having to burn flash, and he's got nothing left in the tank. Steve, a big Gnar against the wall, and they get two just like that. It's inhibitor time with RalleZ on the hunt, finds Nukeduck, boomerang out, forcing Shook back, and Fox can't quite finish the job, but they're back to Fountain, licking their wounds, and Schalke are knocking on the front door.
And look at those death timers. There is no way that Vitality are going to have enough to stop this push. Schalke, they're going to be able to equalize the series 1-1 and knock down Team Vitality.